It started with a sound I wish I had ignored. A scream. Not the kind you hear in horror movies. Not the exaggerated kind people make for attention. This scream was different. It was raw, terrified, and it came from the house next door. The same house that had been locked, silent, and empty for almost 3 years. Or at least that's what everyone in the neighborhood believed. But that night, as I stood frozen in my kitchen with my heart pounding against my chest, I realized something chilling. The house wasn't empty, and whatever was inside didn't want to be found. I moved into my house on Maple Street about 4 years ago. It was a quiet neighborhood, tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, kids riding bicycles in the afternoons. But there was one house that always felt wrong. The house next door. It was an old 2-story home with faded gray paint and tall, narrow windows. From the outside, it looked normal. But there was something strange about it. The curtains were always closed, the lights were never on, and the front door was always locked. At first, I assumed the owners were away, maybe traveling, maybe renting the property later. But weeks turned into months, months turned into years. And still, no one ever came or went. The mailbox stayed empty, the driveway stayed clear, and the windows stayed dark. It was like the house had been forgotten. But sometimes, late at night, I thought I saw movement behind the curtains. Naturally, the neighbors talked. Every neighborhood has gossip, and Maple Street was no different. One evening during a block barbecue, I finally asked about the house. "Does anyone know who owns the place next door to me?" I asked. An older woman named Mrs. Harper immediately lowered her voice. "You mean the Wilson house?" I nodded. She glanced around before speaking again. "That house has a history." That got my attention. "What kind of history?" Mrs. Harper hesitated. Then she said something that made the conversation suddenly quiet. "The last family who lived there disappeared." I laughed nervously. "Disappeared?" She nodded. "About 5 years ago, a couple and their daughter. Police came and searched the place for weeks. And then," she leaned closer, "they just stopped talking about it." The story sounded ridiculous, but something about the way everyone avoided eye contact made me uncomfortable. Almost like they didn't want to talk about it anymore. For 3 years, nothing happened. The house remained silent. Until one night. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard it. A scream. Loud, desperate, coming from the direction of the locked house next door. I sat up in bed, my heart racing. Then it happened again. Another scream. This one even louder. There was no doubt now. Someone was inside that house, and they were in trouble. My first instinct was to call the police, but something made me hesitate. What if it was nothing? What if I was mistaken? Still, the screams continued, so I grabbed a flashlight and stepped outside. The night air was cold and silent, except for the sound coming from the neighbor's house. I slowly walked across the lawn. The closer I got, the more my stomach tightened. The front door was still locked, just like always. But one thing was different. A faint light flickered behind the curtains. Someone was definitely inside. I walked around the side of the house. Branches scratched against the walls as the wind picked up. Then I noticed something strange. The back door was slightly open, just a few inches, and from inside, I could hear something moving, heavy footsteps, and then whispering. My hands were shaking now. Every instinct told me to leave, but the screams had stopped, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that someone inside might need help. So I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Dust, mold, and something else, something metallic. The house looked abandoned, furniture covered in sheets, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. But there were footprints on the floor, fresh ones, leading toward the basement. Then I heard it again. A faint cry coming from below. The basement door creaked as I opened it. Darkness swallowed the stairs. I pointed my flashlight downward and slowly descended. Each step felt heavier than the last. Halfway down the stairs, I heard a voice. "Help!" A weak whisper. My heart nearly stopped. Someone was definitely down there. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, my flashlight beam revealed something horrifying. A small room, locked with metal bars, and inside, a young woman tied to a chair, her face pale, eyes wide with fear. The moment she saw me, she started crying. "You have to get me out of here!" Before I could respond, I heard footsteps above me. Someone else was in the house, and they were coming back. The basement door slammed shut upstairs. Heavy footsteps moved across the floor. Then the sound of someone walking toward the stairs. Slowly, deliberately. The woman whispered urgently, "He's coming!" My heart pounded in my ears. I looked around desperately for something to break the lock, but there was no time, because the footsteps had reached the basement door. And then, the handle started turning. The door creaked open. A tall shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. Then a voice spoke. Calm, cold, almost amused. I was wondering when someone would get curious. The man stepped into the light, and when I saw his face, I realized something even more terrifying. I knew him. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone from our neighborhood, someone everyone trusted. And suddenly I understood. The locked house next door was never empty. It was hiding something far darker than anyone imagined. Sometimes the scariest secrets aren't hidden in abandoned places. They're hidden right next door, behind familiar smiles and locked doors.